All right, so I'll just kick things off by doing a quick introduction. So welcome everybody to the NVIDIA Omniverse live stream. We've been doing these pretty much every Wednesday, taking a couple breaks here and there. As I mentioned, we're going to be taking a break shortly for SIGGRAPH. But this is a fantastic stream for today because we have two very special people here. We've got Frank Delis, who you're looking at his great video right there. He's a senior director, product manager of NVIDIA Omniverse. And we have Vince Brisebois, who's a senior
Yep.
product marketing manager for NVIDIA Omniverse. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Exciting.
This is
Thanks.
this is Frank's first stream, so we will go really hard on him and ask him all about his childhood and
No,
all
don't do
that kind
that.
of stuff. Um, so we are so I think what we'll do is we'll start off for people who don't know about NVIDIA Omniverse. Frank and Vince, what is Omniverse? First of all, because we're talking about a part of Omniverse today, which is the Create app. But for the whole platform, how would you define Omniverse?
Sure, I can start there. So, Omniverse is a collaboration and simulation platform that we developed here at NVIDIA. First and foremost, actually, for a lot of our own use cases. As we build new technology and new software within the company, we actually needed a way to simulate a lot of the things that we build, either it's robotics or drive simulation or medical. So we actually needed something that leveraged NVIDIA technology plus this ability to simulate large worlds and complex materials and physics and actually take advantage of all of our SDKs that we've been building internally to develop these new platforms. So it actually started there, but what we realized is that this is extremely valuable for anyone who wants to collaborate with each other, but also collaborate across tools. So when we say collaboration, we actually build something that allows you to collaborate from tool to tool as well as user to user. And what I mean by that is that there's so many tools that we use and love, Max and Maya and Blender and all these Revit and AutoCAD, tools that we love and use to build worlds. But a lot of times they don't work with each other very well. There's not a lot of data translation that works extremely well. So we spend a lot of time just making sure that what we've been building is actually collaboration of all the tools that are out there so they can all work together better. And we did that by leveraging USD, which is an open source scene description standard developed by Pixar that allows us to describe these worlds, but also the way we build these worlds are completely shareable with each other. Like we don't want to build anything that's proprietary that doesn't allow you to use it with other tools. So by using USD, anything you create or build or visualize can move between these different tools freely and open. So it's a really important thing we've developed here. And on top of this platform for collaboration is the simulation engine, which just allows you to simulate reality, simulate these virtual worlds as physically accurate as possible with the highest fidelity materials and the fastest rendering that we can develop, so that you can see your creations, make iterations on those creations much more quickly. And it doesn't matter if you're in media entertainment and you want to just visualize a character, or if you want to do a simulation of a factory, or if you want to simulate a robot. A lot of these things share similar properties. So that's kind of the core around Omniverse. It's a platform to connect and collaborate around all these different tools and users. And we also developed apps on top of this platform. So apps to create, layout, render, view on top of the platform as examples of how you can develop even your own applications on top of this platform. But I'm going to walk you through some of that today.
Awesome, very cool. Vince, would you like to add anything to that? That was pretty nice description.
That was very all-encompassing. But one plug I'll make though is everything's built on the USD, on the Universal Scene Description, and that's something that artists that coming to the platform really want to brush up on. It's a different way of working, right? Once you start collaborating with other people and you start using layers and references and kind of having live sync between different files. So we've actually put together a great introduction to USD DLI training that's going to be launching at SIGGRAPH. So I invite everyone, whether you're just an artist that wants to use the platform, or you're a developer creating connections into the Omniverse and new tools to operate on these USD scene files, to try out this training and learn more about kind of the structure and how do you interact with it using Python and using Omniverse.
And what's it? So right now, Omniverse is in open beta, and we could talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But everybody is encouraged to try. I think right now is a super important phase to get feedback from all the users, so we can prioritize the features so that people can really take the best advantage of it for their work or play. All right. So thank you for that great overview. So what do you want to go into? What Create is?
Yeah, so let's start with when you get Omniverse, what is it? What do you start with, and how do you get going? And that'll help explain what Create is and even other apps. So I'm going to switch over to my my screen here, and so basically the first thing you get is this launcher. And this launcher is, if you go to the open beta site for Omniverse, you can download this launcher. It's free for everyone to use in this open beta, and you can even use it commercially. It's great. But anyway, first you get this launcher, and the launcher is broken up in these primary tabs here. You've got news, which is just mostly news around the things that we're doing and building. But the exchange, you'll see, is one of the first tabs. And what you'll get in here is a lot of the different apps and features and connectors that we're developing. So there's really three major parts. There's a lot more in the platform itself, but three major parts you're gonna get introduced to right away. Which is, one is apps. So there's apps like Create and View and KLN and Isaac Sim, and they're different apps for different personas. Create is an app for allowing users to assemble scenes and light them and render them using USD, and so it allows you to really aggregate from a lot of different tools. And because it's USD, it augments the tools that you have out there. Our goal is not to replace any tools that are out there. It's about collaborating with those tools, extending them, and adding value back. So for example, you can create a scene inside of Create, beautiful level, and then bring that right into Unreal as a level, and put that into a game. So you do the same thing. I can bring it to Maya and render it in Arnold. So it's just a way to move data around between these different tools and use the best tool for the job. That's it. It just helps you again collaborate and extend your existing workflows. And then we have tools like View, which is for reviewing, and I'll get more into that a little later. The other key concept is connectors. So if I look at connectors, you'll see connectors from Maya and Revit. And what this means is we've built special connectors for these tools that allow them to write USD in and out, as well as MDLs or variants or animations in and out of USD. Now, a lot of the tools are starting to have USD support natively in it. And we can import USD files directly, no problem. And we can import OBJ files and FBX files and step files. So there's a bunch of different data we can just bring into Omniverse easily. But a connector means something more. It's a little bit above that, which says, yes, I can bring data back and forth between this app, but I also do some really cool stuff like live connect. I can do live collaboration between multiple apps, where if I move something in one, it moves in another. If I build a really complex material in Unreal, that's going to translate 100% into MDL and come into our tools and to Create. So it's amazing what these connectors can do, and it adds another level above. But if you don't see a connector here for the tool you have, it doesn't matter. We can still, most of the time, take the OBJs, FBXs, or any other data directly out and into these applications. And I'd say the third thing about this launcher and that you can go get is Nucleus. So Nucleus is the collaboration portion. So this is two really big portions of Omniverse. Remember, I was saying collaboration and simulation. So collaboration, it actually comes with a full tool set to create your own collaboration environment, share it with your friends or coworkers, work together on assets, have version control on those assets. You can have microservices that run on these assets. So it's an amazing kind of collaboration environment that you can have on your workstation. You can put it on-prem, or you can put it in the cloud. really allows you to collaborate easily across these tools. So I'll get a bit more into Nucleus in a minute, but you have this capability directly in here as well. But once I do have an app that I like, it will download into my library, and here I can run any of the different apps. So I can see I have Create and I have View and other apps in here. And even when I do have an app that's in here, I can actually pick which version of the app I want to run. So if you have multiple versions of that application, you can go ahead and just run that version. So it allows you to have that backwards compatibility of any version that we put out there real easily. But I'm going to jump in here and just go into Create. And I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing here. So I'm going to launch it here directly, and it's going to launch up Create. And these apps are built on top of the Omniverse platform. And what I mean by that is actually Omniverse comes with a toolkit to make your own apps, which is really cool. We actually call it Kit, and it's built on top of USD and Python, and you can develop your own user interfaces and extensions and plugins to create your own user interface. So we've created one called Create that allows you to assemble worlds from different applications, so you can aggregate content from Max and Maya and Revit and pull the data in. You can light it, you can render it, you can add materials to it, you can add physics to it, you can add behavior to it. So you can do a lot of great things directly with this application. So its persona is really for virtual world building, again for creatives, AEC, manufacturing, digital twins. So it reaches a wide audience because it's a very generic kind of creation tool. But from here we find people will take this tool and modify it. They'll make their own widgets or UI because everything you see in the Create UI, these little tabs here, are Python extensions or simple extensions that you can load, unload, make your own, and populate that into the UI. So we'll get into that. But you can see this extension list, and we'll load some later, that these are all the extensions that I have. And I can load and unload these different extensions. I can search, and there's just hundreds of them that I can go in here. And I can turn them on, and I can dock them in the UI. And it's really great. It's an easy way to build these extensions. And all of them serve as an example for you. They're all the sources available because it's Python. You can go look at these extensions, and you can edit them and create your own, and again dock them into the UI. But today I'm going to actually focus more on the new features of Create. We just put out a new beta, 2021.3. Again, this is available today. You can go get it and download it and play with it. But we have a lot of great new features that I want to go through, and we have an hour, so I want to start showing you some of these things, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A, and I can do all the stuff. So everything I'm going to do will be live. So it's in beta. So if I crash, I crash, but we'll go through it together. So the first thing I want to show is that we're going to go. So one of the cool things here, we have bookmarks, so I can bookmark any folder I want and that I want to start working with. But the way these apps work, Create and View, they all just load USD files natively. So I can load it from my hard drive, my network drive, or Nucleus. Right? So you can see actually when we look at my content browser, I can see data that's on my computer, but I can also see Nucleuses that I've connected, and I can have many nuclei. Right, so I can have a Nucleus on my home workstation, I can have a Nucleus at work, I can have a Nucleus in the cloud, and I can have many of them that can collaborate with each other to store data and do version control. And so it's really, really cool how you can connect to it. You can actually think of it as like the web. When we look at these USD files, when we open them, they're actually URLs. So it's a URL to your hard drive or a URL to a server in the cloud. Means we can build scenes from multiple servers. So it's really, really cool, and we'll get into that a bit. But anyway, so I've bookmarked some folders that I want to work with, so it's a nice, easy way to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is just load up some Marbles assets, and it's timely. We have a contest going on right now. We're doing a build your own kind of marble set with physics, and it's a fun competition. We had one a few months back, and it was really, really great. People did some amazing stuff, but now we're doing it with physics, so you can animate them and do great things with it. So here I actually loaded this USD file, and this is assembled from many tools. So Max and Maya, and where we created a lot of these different assets, but we use Create to pull it together, and assemble a little world. So the first thing you'll notice is it is scene assembly in USD, so it is a USD file, and we also leverage a API developed by Pixar as well called Hydra. And Hydra allows us to have multiple renderers on the same USD data. And it's a common API, so we can make many renderers on the same data. And why that's important is that, going back to that, use the best tool for the job, use the best renderer for the job too. But we don't want you to force you to change your data just to change the renderer, or even the materials. That's why we've open sourced MDL and open source PhysX and added that to USD schemas, so you can move between these different renderers depending on what you want to do. Do you want to do real time? Do you want to do offline? Do you want to do some amazing spectral rendering for an architecture rendering? You can do all that. So you'll notice in the top left, the rendering, we have an RTX renderer. I'm actually on a 3090 today. Woohoo, exciting. I love a 3090. But it is using the 3090, and I have a real-time RTX mode. And everything in RTX mode in this renderer, that's the default, is ray traced. So, and why that's important is it's even the primary rays, the core of the rendering is ray traced. So most renderers, if they're real time, they have to make this trade-off. It's either made for real time and lowest common denominator, or offline, and it can scale across multiple CPUs and GPUs. We needed something right in the middle that can be real time but also scale to multiple GPUs and be fully ray traced. So if you're trying to go with the lowest common denominator, you often build rasterizers, and rasterizers have different limitations where they're great at going fast on multiple hardware, but they don't scale well with geometry. They don't scale well with complex materials. Where ray tracing can scale really well with geometry and really well with materials, but often that's saved for these offline renders. So we built this renderer in the middle that allows us to do pure ray tracing in real time without any rasterization, so we can do things like trillions and trillions of polygons natively without doing any kind of baking or decimation or any kind of weird tools like that. It just allows you to load the highest possible geometry easily. So it's really cool. So we have this real-time mode that's pure ray trace. You can you can see the great quality of reflections and refractions and area lighting. It's all just basic. You don't have to do anything special to do that. And again, nothing is baked. And the cool thing is I can switch between these different Hydra renderers. So this is the RTX real-time renderer, but I can also switch to an RTX path trace render. And then you didn't even see it. It was so quick, but this is actually path tracing now. And path tracing just gives you that extra edge of quality. It goes a little slower. You can see a little bit of noise when I move around. Again, this is on a single GPU, but it's path tracing this image, and it's going to give you the highest fidelity result. So I can switch between that depending on what I want to do. If I want to do kind of a real-time project, or do something that just needs to be accurate. And then we have a third renderer, IRA, which will do spectral rendering. And I'll show you that a little bit today too, where this gives you the most accurate physically bounced materials and lighting, and this is what you use. And even when we built our building at NVIDIA, we used IRA to visualize the lighting coming through the building. We wanted to accurately see how light was going to pass through the windows and acoustics, and where the temperature was going to be in the different rooms. And so IRA is kind of it's not necessarily the fastest but its focus is on the highest quality results possible. And again, all of these are leveraging MDL as part of that spec. So again, some basic things like Create is a layout, animation, rendering tool set. So again, to assemble these virtual worlds. So of course you can go grab objects and you can move them around and place them and rotate them and do all this fun stuff, what typical layout tools will do. But we have some additional things because we have all these technologies within NVIDIA like PhysX and MDL that we leverage all together in this application. So I can do some extra stuff like, so one of the new features is this zero gravity mode. We started to introduce it as a preview, and now it's coming out of preview mode. But I can click this little zero gravity mode, and that enables basically PhysX for the whole scene. And now I can just do things like set objects that I want to move, but this time move them with physics. So if I just told these two objects I just want them to be physical, as I move them, they're gonna hit each other. So now when I'm moving objects, I'm not gonna just go through each other. It's gonna collide accurately with that object. So here I can just keep selecting these objects and turn on my physics property on them. So even if I do things like scale them, it's gonna make sure they don't go through each other. Right, and they're all going to stack up nicely, right? And I can move them more physically. And even if I take them and let's say I move them up in the air here, and again, if I scale them, it's going to automatically collide so they don't go through. So it's really cool. It's so easy. I can just so that was one of the hard things about usually scene layout is not colliding objects through things, and so we wanted to make that super easy. So even for example, I can tell this object that I want these objects to be in it. And normally they're pretty difficult to do by hand, but here I can just bring it over and I'll even rotate them here. And I can say, you know what, I just want to drop them in however they land. So I can just press play here and then just drop them. And I got one. I think I got one in there. Yeah, I got a couple in there and I got a couple outside, and they all stacked up nicely. Right, so you can do some cool stuff with that with physics right away with the with USD and create, and it's pretty great. It's pretty easy. All right, so the next thing I want to show a little bit of. So from the UI perspective, you've got all the tools for moving and rotating and scaling, and you've got zero gravity, and the other cool thing is that you can not only just lay out objects like I was doing before with regular transforms, but you can also start painting things. So I'm actually going to create a new scene from scratch. So we wanted to make, if you wanted to make a new scene, we wanted to make that easier for everyone. So we actually added a bunch of tabs down here. So you'll see new tabs here for assets. And the cool thing is it's actually grabbing assets from this mount that we have in NVIDIA of just content, and we just constantly update it live, and you can get new content. So I can look at some trees. I've got some great game content from Bannerlord and Squad that are in here that you can play with. I can look at materials. So I have a whole library of materials. I've got skies, dynamic ones, and HDRIs. And I even got a bunch of samples that you can load here directly. So we have these new browsers concept. A neat thing here is actually even these browsers, you can add your own collections. So if you have your own samples, you can add your own collection to that, or if you have your own set of assets, you can just add your own collection to that, and it's easy to assemble that. But now we also have easy ways to assemble this content. So if I just create a quick plane here, and I want to start populating it with some of these assets, of course I can just go drag one of these assets onto the scene, and I'll get a little tree, and it will load the material, and I got a tree. But I need to be able to do this, populate this more easily, so I can use the new paint tool. So a paint, I can go here and just say, well, I want this tree, and then I want this tree, right? And then I also want this tree on there. And I'll get rid of this cube. And now I've got a bunch of trees. And it'll actually give me a bunch of parameters that I can use to adjust this, how they'll be distributed and that sort of stuff. But now I can just start painting. So I put my paintbrush down, it will start painting a tree. But if I keep spraying it, I can spray lots of trees right in here. So it's pretty cool. I can easily just spray some trees. So I'm quickly just laid out some tree assets. Now, before when I was telling you about the polygon counts, like these trees, every leaf they're polygons. They're not cards or anything like that, which typically you have to do for real time. They're geometry. So there's millions of polygons here, and I'll show you some stats as we get towards the end here. So now they have some trees. I want some grass. So I can have a library here of different brushes that I made, and I made a grass brush. And here, instead of just painting it, I can just say flood. And I'll start flooding. I keep flood it more and flood it more. Keep flooding the ground with these grass blades. Right, let's keep adding more and billions more here. So anyways, I can keep adding more and more grass blades, and then just keep going. And in areas that I want to add more, I can just keep painting or flood it more. And anyway, so I can keep adding these different grasses on here. And then for materials, I could probably go find a dirt in here. Let's see, I got a dirt. There you go. And I can just drag that onto that plane, and I can get a nice dirt material on that. Let's see here. It's plain. Let's make sure I got it. Nope. So I'll go find that dirt. There it is. And I'll apply that dirt. Okay, so I got some dirt on there. Probably need to adjust some tiling, but anyway, now I got to do some lighting in here. So I can obviously go and just go create some light. So I can go to create some new light sources in the scene. So I can go create a light and just drop it in. But we added to the new release this ability to hit tab, and this brings up quick search. And it'll search through everything through the app real easily. So actually, this is a great way. I can even turn the UI completely off and just use this quick search. But I can type in dome light in the search here. So I type dome light and I just double click it and I create a dome light. But now that dome light is selected, when I hit tab again, it has skills. You'll notice actually when that quick search menu looks a little different. It actually on the top of the list, it actually shows an HDRI library. Because it knows that I have a light selected, that means I can have a skill set as part of that selection. So you can add not only the search for these tools, but again, this is highly extensible all through Python. You can add your own, but I can now search through these assets with this quick search, and I can add a skill saying, well, if it's an object selected, then show me materials first. If it's a light selected, show me some HDRIs first, or vice versa. You can just keep going and add more skills. So here I can just type clear, give me a clear sky, hit enter. It'll automatically assign that clear sky, boom, to that dome light and give me a texture in the background. And I can go quickly switch between path trace mode, and now I can start seeing some nice trees with some grass, and it's very easy to go set that up. And again, I can see I can move around this scene pretty quickly. And we put a lot of grass blades on it, and these grass is not, again, it's not their geometry. So if I go start looking at my scene statistics here. If I go to statistics and I go to RTX scene, I don't know, what am I at so far? It looks like total visible triangles already is 82 million. So I'm 82 million on just triangles already. Actually, oh yeah, 82 million. Yeah, 82 million. So, and this is just quick. So that's a really great thing about ray tracing. I can just bombard it with triangles, and it's just going to eat it for lunch. So it's a really great. And then I can still go here and go to my my assets. So I can go to my asset tab, and I can go to, and I'll go to squad. Let's see, we'll go search through all the game assets here and see what I can find. So boom, it grabbed all the game assets that I can use from the squad game, and I can just drag this onto the scene. And scale's a little big, so I can go scale it down a little bit. And now quickly, brought in a game asset quickly. And I can even do things like if let's turn off this sunlight here, and I'm going to actually get rid of this dome light, and I'm actually going to add a dynamic sky. So I'm going to go to skies. I can do the same thing. I can just double click the sky. Now it's added a dynamic sky to the scene. So if I go to extensions, I can find lots of great tools. And one of those extensions I want to load up is a sun study tool. So here I can use a sun study tool, great for visual AEC visualizations and things, but I can enable that. And because the sky is dynamic, I can now start moving the sun in the sky procedurally in here. And if I want to even make it a little brighter, I can go to post-processing and just turn on some tone mapping, and here I can just crank that up a bit. In fact, I could even use just auto. We'll just make it automatically look cool. So now I can go through the sky here and it will dynamically adjust the exposure of the camera, and I can quickly create some nice results. Anyway, so that's quickly how I can just assemble a scene even with just basic assets. You can pull these assets in from these libraries, but you can bring in, again, OBJ files, FBX files, USD files, USDZ files, and just drag them into these scenes. So let me show that too. So when we have USD, some people are starting to hear about USDZ. So USDZ is basically a USD file that is zipped up and has its textures and materials and all those things directly in it as one file. And this makes it easy for distribution or for delivery for the web or even things like AirKit or your Apple devices. You can load up USDZ files. And basically it's a zipped file, and in it is a USD file plus all its textures and materials and things like that. So we do have the ability to take those files directly. So let me just go grab some here. I'm on a second monitor, so you can't see that directly, but I'm gonna drag one over. So here I have some USDZ files, and I can bring over this, like here's a USDZ file of a hand plane, and I'll drag that on here so I can see the USDZ file of that, right? And it comes over with everything. It comes over with the textures and materials and everything on it. Here's another one of a lemon meringue pie, right, that we have. So, and sometimes you'll see that if assets doesn't look exactly right because of the normals. So depending on how individual users made the normals or the textures, sometimes you have to do a little bit of tweaking. So in here, if I go to the material, I can look at the normal texture and see that it's it should be set to raw for that type of texture. So it depends on how you're setting it up, but you can do that. So that's one common issue I see in forums. Just use the raw for normal maps. It makes it look the best.
I'm hungry now.
And again, you can look at that in path trace or real time, or it's really easy. So I'm going to turn my Sun Study tool back off. So I'm not using that anymore, and I'm going to reset. Because that's how you can bring in USDZ files. You can also bring in some point cloud data. So here I'm going to do file import. So import, I can bring in data. Again, remember I was saying before, you can do FBX, OpenJ. You can bring in a bunch of different files, GLTF, E57s. You can bring in a bunch of different data. So here I'm going to bring in a point cloud. I think I've got this pump. And now I brought in this point cloud data, and so it renders it in the scene. And now the cool thing here is it's actually using geometry points. So USD has this thing called geom points, and it's actually converting these point clouds into geom points and then rendering them as little voxels fast. So basically, I'm not bringing in geometry. I'm actually bringing in these voxels of this point cloud in here, and you can see the quality of the scan. So depending on the scan, you'll get more or less points or higher quality, but you definitely can adjust things in the point cloud. So you can see like the cell size, like how big do I want those little cells to be. So I can kind of soften it up. But what I think is really cool here with these point clouds is they actually exist fully in the scene. So if I create a new object in here and move it into the space here, it's actually clipping. It's like an object inside the scene. But also you'll see things like even the bottom, the ground here. I'll make it more obvious. I'll apply a material, a PBR material, and I will just make it a little darker so it's more obvious, and then I'll just make the reflection higher. So you can see it actually also reflects and ray trace reflections. It's also casting shadows. So if I rotate the lighting, it's casting shadows. So let me see, I can turn that on in here, common, flow. I can just make sure it's using shadows in there too. So you can turn on point cloud shadows, reflections. They exist in the scene, and you can easily just bring in point cloud data directly in here. And it's really, again, really cool to work with.
So we have a question actually on the point clouds. How big of a point cloud can you import? Are there any limitations there?
Yeah, so right now, we can bring in billions of points right now. So it does stream them in. So you can actually adjust how many. So there's max blocks here. You can adjust how many of those points you want to bring in, and you can adjust that up and down and stream them in and out. We still have more work to do. Like we can bring in really large ones, and we're actually already in betas of even more technology to stream it better. And but we can bring in, we're bringing huge factories right now, and but we want to continue to push this and get just gigantic scans in here that we can leverage. So of course you can still use all your point cloud tools to do cut out sections that you want or clip them and do that sort of stuff. But you can bring in pretty large point clouds. I think the most I brought in is several million right now, but it will support many more points than that.
Nice.
All right, so that's a little bit about the point clouds. And so another great feature about we've added to create, and about the halfway mark here. So I'll just show you some basics, and then we'll dive in even a little deeper. But remember, I was explaining a bit about how everything is a URL. So basically, if I create, I'll do a real simple example first, and then I'll show a more real world example. But let's say if I just create this sphere, and I want to save this to my nucleus. So with the new nucleus, we have version control and URLs. So if I go to my, I have a local nucleus on my machine. I can go to a project folder here, and I'm gonna just, I don't know, make a new folder, new test. Okay, and in here I'm gonna put this sphere. Okay, now, so now I've just saved the sphere out, as a USD file. Now the way you work with USD and in Omniverse, everything is references of many assets. You don't try and build up these one gigantic USD file. What you do is you make things of lots of USD files and lots of references, and this way all of them can be independently edited and by other teams and be more collaborative. So if I go back to that that local host, my nucleus, I go back to that project and look at that new test. So I already got my sphere. And I drag my sphere in here, and I just reference that sphere in here. So I've got my stage, and I can reference them, a few times, right? So that's how you can now make a new USD that's referencing other USDs. So if I actually look at this asset and look at the reference of it, so I click on sphere here, it will show it's a reference, and it's pointing to a URL to that file, which server it's on, so it's on my localhost server, and what the name of that file is. So you can reference these things as URLs. You can actually reference regular images from the internet. So if I wanted to go reference an image like of a weather page that's updated daily, I can put that as a texture on an object. It's really cool. But the other thing you'll see here is that, well, I actually have a checkpoint. So it has versioning for this. So if I even save this scene, I'll just save this scene as my sphere stage, where I'm going to kind of assemble everything. When I save it, I can save that as well. But I'm actually going to open up another create. I'm going to go here and open another one. And I'm going to change the sphere. But you can see already that as I'm saving this scene, it's starting to save checkpoints automatically. So automatically, every time you save, it's going to create a checkpoint of everything you've done in that checkpoint. So you can always go back and restore a checkpoint. So I go, oh man, I really messed up the scene. I can restore to a checkpoint earlier. So it's a way to have version control. So if I wanted to add a fourth sphere in here, I can say File, Save with Options. This allows you to do some commenting. Added a fourth sphere, right? So now when I pick on this scene, it says it has a new checkpoint in here, added a fourth sphere, right? And I can always go here and say open that one directly, or I can say restore the checkpoint to that one. I make that one back to head. So it's great. It's just built in. It works. You can use it for textures, materials, scenes, everything in the system, and that's a key feature. One of the key features of Nucleus.
It's wild.
But with another version of Create, I can go here and go back to that other file, new test, and go back to Sphere, right? And I'm going to add another object in here and just say I'm going to also create a cube in here, or a cone. I'll say cone, right? So I add another cone, and then I'll save this one. Okay. So if someone else is making changes, I can go on any of these references that I'm using and just hit the refresh button here. And it's going to go get any changes that are made to that scene, and it should load it in here. Let's see. Not doing that. All right, so let me go look at head here. I actually think it's still loading. Yeah, there, it's still loading. So it actually went and got the updated change that I made on the other create, and I loaded it in and updated the reference. But see, now I added these, all the cones that I all added for each one of these things. Well, really cool thing here is even often for creative shots, you may want to have, well, this scene, I want to lock this asset down. I don't care if someone made new changes. I want to lock it down so it doesn't get updated by anyone else. So I can actually click on an object here, this reference here, and say, well, this one, I want it to stay at a different version. So here I can go, instead of saying go get that latest one. Go get the one where I just created the sphere without the cone, right? So now I'm getting a version of that asset that's at a different state, right? And I can do that for any of these. I can say I'll do it for all of them, or I can say just do it to one or do it to three of them. So this allows you to actually make your scenes very deterministic. Now this is really interesting because most collaboration tools have a check-in, check-out, you sync to your local machine, that's where you have your data. This allows you to have any state of the object at any given time. So you can have things like, again, one asset at one version, another asset at a different version. You can lock the scene and say, just lock all assets to these versions. So you can do incredible, complete flexibility for your workflows. So if you want to lock a shot down, I don't want it to change. You can of course lock those references. Now sometimes people will flatten the whole scene, but that's not good because that means that you lose all where did the asset really come from, right? So, but with this, you can set which assets I want to be at different versions. So again, here I get to get another asset and say, go put me at the creation of that scene, which was nothing. But give me one that was just a sphere. There it is, right? So I can go easily change out these different things. The next set of features I want to show you is, so now that we can have the scene assembly, we can have version control, we can have references, we can do all these things. Now I want to make this scene alive. I want to be able to do stuff with the scene that, use animation. So I can bring in animation from different systems. Like I can bring in Max animations and my animations and place them in the world and use animated content. But you can also actually now, with the latest version of Create, is animate within it. So you can animate. Now again, this is not to replace Max or Maya. This is not like advanced rigging, and what we've added is basic keyframing for stuff. So you can, if you want to move a door or open a window or do those sort of things, or if you want to sequence a set of cameras to make your own movies. This actually started from our Machinima project. So we have another one in the open beta called Machinima, which is designed for people to create their own movies from game assets, and they can assemble shots and sequences and render them out and make animated movies. And it's a really cool tool. You should definitely check it out. It allows you to live sync from webcam and capture rigging, and it's from the webcam. It's just really, really fun. So definitely go try that out. But as we experiment there and we make easy to use tools, we pull them into tools like Create and others, because it's all just extensions. It's all shareable modular extensions. So you can assemble your own app using these different extensions. So here I have an apartment scene here. This is fully ray traced. It's got some volumetric lighting coming through the window. It's using GI to bounce the lighting up on the scene. Everything is real time. There's nothing baked. Again, you can switch between path trace mode and you can switch between this real time mode easily. And I can move around the scene and can inspect the whole scene. But I can also I want to start animating through the scene. I want to be able to create a movie and give this to a client to kind of see what I want. So we have this new feature called a sequencer, and a sequencer is pretty fun. It allows me to take cameras that I have that I create, and I can just search for cameras. See what I got. So I got one camera here right now. Okay, so that's one camera. So let me go make another camera before I do this. I'm going to go over here. Actually, I'm going to stay here for a second. Oops. There. Put this in perspective. I'll leave that camera alone and go and make another camera over here. Something like this. Something cool. And I'll say create a camera from view. And now I've got two cameras. So I've got my first camera and my second camera. But now I can just take that first camera and drag it down to the sequencer. Right? And I can scale it up where I want this camera to be. And I can take the second camera I just made and also drag it down in here and play that 1 second. So now as I scrub through this timeline, I'll be able to go from that first camera and then switch to the second camera, right? So it's a cool way to just press play and it will just move, I have a slide animation on that first camera, and then it's going to switch to the second camera automatically through the sequencer. So you can easily just create tons of cameras and sequence them through them. Now you can also create that's cameras. You can get camera sequences. You can create asset animation sequences. You can line up animations that were animated. You can add sound and play that. So the sequencer adds all those abilities. So I can also do things like, well, you know what? In this scene, I want to create a blind or something, and I want to animate it. I don't have a blind right now, so I'm going to create a cube, just so I can just make a makeshift blind here, and I'll make something like that.
We have a quick question about cameras. Can you attach a camera to an object? So if you had an object that was already animated, you could just connect your camera to it.
Yep, anything can be parented to anything. So a light can be parented to a camera can be parented to an object. Anything can be animated, an object, a material, a property, all that stuff can be animated. Actually, I'm going to do it kind of right now with this. Actually, let me undo that and go back to perspective. Oops, just turn this off and go to perspective, and I'm just gonna create a transform for this my new blind here. So I'm making a blind, but the pivot's not in the right spot. It's in the middle of the object. So I can actually right click here and say create a an X form, and then just move that up where I want it to scale from. And then basically what I can do is just reparent that. So I can say take this cube and parent it to that X form, and now allow me to scale that that object from that pivot point, right? So I made a makeshift blind here, but so now we have other tools here to keyframe these things. Again, another extension, I can load that up, and it allows me to create keyframes for anything. So I can say create a keyframe at that frame, and then I can go a few frames forward, and then I can go and just scale it, closing, and create another keyframe, and now I should have that animating open and closing. And I can just take that frame that I want to last longer, and now it'll take longer to close. I can do that. Very easy to keyframe any object that's selected. And now with the sequencer, I can go take that asset and just drag it into my sequence and say when do I want that to happen. So I'll go back to my my camera animation, and then you'll see it starts closing as I get over there, right? So you can line up camera shots and animations and do all that directly within the sequencer and the keyframer, and it's just easy to go do that. And any of those properties are keyframeable. You can keyframe transforms or light intensities or material properties and all that great stuff.
That's such a great workflow. Yeah. And if there's some of these extensions that you use all the time, you can have them set to auto load, right? So that you can kind of customize it. So every time you start your app, you get all those extensions.
There's just so many fun ones in here. There's particle systems. There's this CAD importer allows you to import from. You can even import from Onshape, and just a ton of great stuff. Now this is only the featured. And I'm seeing a bunch of ones in here that are just featured. But if I turn off featured and just delete that, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of extensions that you can pick through and find. And then when you find one you like, you can just go and set it to enabled and auto load, and you're good. Right, so you can find a lot of great stuff to pick and choose from. All right, so we're gonna keep going. Blasters, I got a few more I want to show you that are so super cool. So let me go show another really great feature that we just added, which is this whole materials. So we added this whole material window down here that allows you to easily and quickly browse through materials. But let me just show real quick. So if I create a simple object again, before I do more complex stuff here, you can see if I just grab an object and grab a material, I can just place it and click one on the floor, and I can just quickly start doing materials assignments and real easily. And I can see quickly that I can create some nice ray traced imagery with just a couple buttons. So this material library allows you to go through these different materials. I can also see what is being used in the scene. So these are the ones that I've actually assigned in the scene or have in the scene that I've used. If I double click one of these, I can actually see the preview of it. So I should go back there and generate a preview of it. So I have a nice little preview. And I can also just look at selected, what's on my selected object. So it's great new tools to see the materials in the scene, edit the properties of them, look at material previews. It's a great new feature. But the one I'm really excited about is this new, when you hit this create new, you have a bunch of new materials. We had glass and PBR before. So PBR is like a standard Disney style physically based rendering material. We actually had new ones called Omnisurface. I'm going to save that for a later presentation, but Omnisurface is standard surface spec. you can do everything with that material. You can create amazing skins and translucency and just really cool. But I'll let you guys play with that. We're going to have more on that later. But OmniSurface is really incredible. But what else I can do is there's a button here called Graph. And Graph allows me to create brand new MDL materials in a graph form. So I can just say create a new material and it gives me a graph and I can start making my own material, whatever I want. And the cool thing is it's using MDL, but it's also leveraging USD Shade. So USD Shade is a part of USD Spec that allows you to have nodes and connections that are in the USD schema. And what's important about having it in USD, that means other tools will be able to edit those graphs and visualize those graphs, even outside of our own tools. And again, this is the key power of everything we do. We don't want to make anything proprietary. We want to make sure that the stuff that you build, you can use it elsewhere and make other editors and never be locked into any one tool or choice. But anyway, so I have my material. I can go here and say I want a diffuse kind of material, so I can just type diffuse, and then I'm going to say I'm going to wire that up to the surface. And then I'm going to say, well, I also want to use a checker pattern, and I create a checker pattern here, and I want the checker pattern to be wired up to the color of the diffuse. And so now I can go to this object and just say assign this new material I've been making. It'll go and compile it and figure out my USD shade and go, boop, make a checker pattern material on it. But I also can do things like start animating it. So I can go animation time and go get the animation time from the scene, and then I can say, well, I'm going to take animation time because it's really just delta and turn it into some floats. So I think it's a float 3 I want to have. So let's see, so you can find a float from floats. There's too many in here, but so let's see, construct float. There you go, construct. There it is. Construct a float 3 from floats. Okay, so basically what I can do is say take time and pump that into one of the floats within a float 3 and take that and make it affect tiling of the texture or the checker pattern. That's compiling it and figuring it out, and now if I press play, it should start doing something fun here. Let's see. So it's probably a little too much. All right, so I'm also going to put it into the offset, so I can also move it to. Let's see here. Yeah, scale's probably too big. I'll take it off the tiling. Disconnect.
Just a question about animation. Do we have animation curves at this point?
Yes. Well, we're in the beginning stages of it. So we have, we are starting to save the data with like when I'm back to that keyframer, when you look at the points that I was making, they actually have, you can change the step, ease in, ease out, Bezier area now, and step out. So we're starting to save all that data. And now we're actually starting to build some tools that allow you to edit the curves easily, and that's coming in probably the next release.
Awesome.
But you can see here I just created a simple, material that has a checker pattern on it, and told it to use animation time to move the x-axis of the tiling, or the x-axis of the material. So you can just easily make water materials, and waves, and all kinds of fun materials with this material graph, and it'll be again a great way to construct stuff. But this incredibly powerful materials in here, like this fleck paint, so I can create car paint materials. So I can go here and say, let's say, replace all that with this one, MDL surface. So now I wired in a fleck paint material, and I can go look at this, and it's really you can see the little tiny dots of all the flecks of the paint in there. And of course I can change the flecks, the size of these dots, so I can get some pretty cool flecky paint materials. But you can see here from the list, it is like almost every single command of MDL or node that you can construct and build these just amazing materials and textures. And in fact, you can even do stuff like you can even build volumes. So like, for example, here I'll just load up something from my demos. I'll do a little volume. I think this is the one. So here it's actually the material itself. MDL is loading a VDB to create a volumes. So you can do amazing. Like, so this is like a volume generated from any of the tools. Like you can do that with Bifrost or other procedural tool, Houdini, and generate volume data and load that directly as a material, and you can do complete 3D volumes as materials, which is again really cool as well. Okay, I think that we're close to the end here, so I want to make sure I take a few minutes of questions. I didn't even get through everything, but there's a lot of really fun stuff. Go try it out yourself. But I'd love to answer some questions.
Yes, we've been peppering them during. I'm trying to see if we missed anything.
Yeah, one of the questions was, create versus view. What's the difference? Where would you use one versus the other app?
Excellent question. All right, so when we started Vue, we actually focused Vue a bit more on AEC. That's where we're kind of doing a lot of our review and approvals, connecting to Revit and SketchUp, and you can do great renderings with it real quickly. But we were finding that a lot of people that wanted to do these editing for AEC actually wanted a lot of tools of Create as well. They want to animate, like you saw with the sequencer, animate walkthroughs and do 360 render and do a bunch of stuff. So we actually pivoted a bit. Because everything's extensions, it just moves them. We just move them around depending on where we want them to be as a persona. So we moved a lot of the editing functionality, like doing things like the sequencing and animation and stuff like that into Create. So Create is where if you're an AEC professional and you want to modify the scene and add animations and render them out, use Create. Vue, where we're positioning Vue and making Vue more easy. We wanted to make that stay easy. We wanted to be it's a fast review and approval tool. So it's where you can do your review and approvals. We can stream out views from that, do XR and AR from that. But we wanted to make it so that it was a really easy tool to just click on a scene, view it, change the sun, maybe edit a material, but not go too deep into the editing, because we wanted to make sure that a client's reviews and executives can use it and get it go easier and easier and easier. So it's a really easy to use review and approval tool, and that's where we're going to focus that tool.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about working with a Nucleus server is anything you're working on that's being saved as a USD, you can go from one app to the other. As we mentioned before, that having this connectivity between apps means you can use the best app for the job, or whether it's Max, Maya, Blender, or any of those external third parties. But that's also true for Omniverse apps. So if you want to jump into Machinima to do some animation, you like that layout, or you want to jump into Create, or you want to jump into Vue to just do a scene review, you can do that, right? The file is independent from the application.
That's right. Here's an example. I was talking a bit about how IRA is integrated into here now as well. So that's actually a default mode. So actually, I'm going to turn on IRA for these things. So I have like a little Lamborghini in this stage, but if I switch to IRA, I can get some really nice physically accurate spectral rendering of this car. And it's got some actually even cool features for doing things like grounding it in the scene. So this is actually on a dome light HDRI. But IRA actually has some nice tools to enable shadows into the dome light, and even things like reflections into the dome light. So I can see I just get a little bit of reflections in the floor. I can adjust the glossiness a bit. So I think if I bring that down, I get a really soft reflection there, which is nice. And now I can blend it in here even better, and I can move it around, and now it looks more planted in this scene. But yeah, even with IRA, you can switch between these different modes. You can switch between the path trace mode, or you can switch to IRA mode real easily, just on the same exact data set, same exact materials, whatever you want.
Are there other renderers that can be added inside Omniverse, and what are the requirements for that if another renderer wants to get
So
added?
it's a Hydra delegate. What we've been doing is making this even more pluginable. So we have right now, you have to jump out of the Create, and there's another bat file for like Storm. So Storm is Pixar's GL based renderer, really fast. It doesn't have a lot of high quality rendering features, but it's made to just fast review of USD scenes. That's another renderer we added, but we're going to continue opening that up more and more to make it more easier. Because right now we're on DX and Vulkan, and a lot of the renderers use GL for setup. So we're adding a capability so that we can add these Hydra delegates even more easily as plugins. So you're going to see things like RenderMan or any of these other Hydra delegates just more easily integrated directly in the UI here. So you can pick them once you install the renderer, it'll just show up in here. So we want to make that easily exposable. So you can do it. It's a little trick today, but we want to make that again really easy to do.
And part of the collaboration is that you could always final render back in Max or Maya with your favorite render, right?
Absolutely.
Because the
Yeah,
data is interchangeable.
Yeah, because of MDL. So MDL is one of the few materials that's cross-class of renderers. So you can go between real-time, offline. So we have MDL in Unreal. We've got MDL in import into Max and Maya, and so you can now take the same material and load it up into one of those tools, and you'll see the same exact result. We translate everything as best as possible, like even low lighting parameters. We can convert Arnold lights and materials into MDLs or USD lights into Arnold lights. So we make sure that that's really translatable. And we have a bunch of tools. We have a material graph tool just for even for conversion, so we can convert like full V-Ray scenes into MDL. It's really really great. So we really want to make sure that with collaboration across tool vendors, we want to push the limits there to allow more tools to work easily with each other.
That's great. One last question on how to switch on and off payloads in Create.
Awesome, good question. Let me show you a really cool feature. So there's a new feature in 2020 1.3. This is an option to open a scene without payload. So for people that don't know what a payload is, one of the great things about USD is it allows you to have a unloadable reference. So it means you can load a gigantic scene, but turn off the geometry. So it means you can still edit the scene without the geometry. So I'm actually going to load up a Toy Story set here. Let's see. Let's go look at. I know where it is. Okay, so I'm going to go my G drive. I'll load up a really big one here, just to give you an example. Let's see, G drive, USD. Let's find a cool scene here. So I got this big set, and I'm going to open this up without loading the geometry. So I said open without payloads. So this should open pretty quickly. So this has 60,000 references or more, right? It's a gigantic scene. But I can edit the scene, and I can delete things out of here if I want. Like, oh man, I messed up my scene, I can't load it anymore, it's too big, or something's broken. This is a great way. You can load the scene without any of its geometry or references, payloads. But I can see all of its the stuff here. So I can say, here's a front desk. Now, if I want to get to the payload, there's actually a little hamburger thing up here, the 3 lines. And we can turn on different columns. One of them is the payload, and one of them is the variant. Payloads, again, is that unloadable reference, and variant is an asset can have multiple variants. So like an asset can have a low LOD and a high LOD, or different style cups, or different whatever you want. It's basically a modeling variant or shading variant on that asset. But from here, I can if I can find a payload in here. Here's some payloads. Actually, I'll just select this whole thing, and then say click on payload. And I'm going to load on the payload of just that selection. And now I can go here and see, hit the F key. It's going to load just that payload, or those payloads, those assets.
It's great for debugging.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think there's like even these. I'll just go and select a bunch of these. Yeah, I'll take all these and turn these payloads on. So it just shows up, right? I just keep turning them on. So it's an easy way to just select pieces of payloads to view quickly.
That's awesome. We got one more question on materials here. Is Material X support on the roadmap, or are we handling that through import? Yeah,
definitely. So so first we want for Material X, we actually added MDL as a backend to Material X. So now when you define a material, you can render that with MDL because all the definitions there. And the core thing about Material X is a standardization of the nodes, like the different set of nodes you do to construct a material. We're supporting that in MDL, those standard. So then it's just a matter of, well, can I take the Material X and import it into the material graph? So on our roadmap we're definitely going to allow import and export of Material X's into the material graph, so you can just leverage those materials directly. And again, another great thing about USD is that an asset can have multiple material contexts. So you can have an asset has a USD preview surface context, a RenderMan context, an MDL context, a Material X context, and you can just switch to what material you want to use. Maybe you want to have for onset, real-time work. Maybe you want to have some, USD preview surface material, but when you final render it, you can render in RenderMan. All that's supported in USD.
That's awesome.
One last question, actually, for both of you. What is your favorite create feature or capability? I feel like the extensions is pretty powerful, but
Yeah.
what do you say, Frank?
Yeah, actually, I would agree with that. I think extreme modularity, because we have a lot of different types of people using using this. Even if you look at our GTCs, like we use everything we've built into our GTC demos, like even the slides are all rendered in Omniverse and Create, and any animations that we create, and customers all have different workflows. And the extreme modularity, people are doing stuff I've just never seen before. Like, oh my God, you're doing that? Like they're doing these crazy wave simulations and robotics things, and just because it's so extremely modular to edit it, you can make workflows pretty dramatically. But of course, just the openness. I think that's key. I think we've always had issues even in projects before where we're like, oof, we love this tool, but we want to use this tool as well. But this one's using proprietary data. I can't get it over here, and you're often stuck in choices. And I think just USD has been a dramatic improvement I think for the industry to move data around and allow you to use the best tool for the job.
Yeah, Vince, do you
Yeah.
agree? That's a
I
pretty good answer.
it's hard to top that, but and it's even hard to just pick one thing, but the nucleus server, the ability to, the decision to go with USD and creating this universal platform for interchange and collaboration, I think is extremely valuable as well. The ability to pick the right tool for the job. I mean, I've worked on some feature films and in some game studios, and oftentimes it's the studio determines which app you're using because there had to be a standardization, and so you couldn't really, if you're an expert in Max and you go to a shop that's using Maya, you were kind of at a disadvantage, or vice versa. And now Blender coming into this mix as well, and having the ability to not only pick the tool but change tools depending on what you're doing. Like if you're doing character animation, you want to use this tool. You're doing a hard model, surface modeling, you want to use this other tool. And the ability to do that during your pipeline, like at any step, and pick, I'm going to go do this over here, I'm going to use this for that, and it's all aggregating into a single format, a single place that's fully interchangeable, I think is, and the fact that those are URLs, and seeing in the future the ability to have your data organized and shared between people and connect to someone's server for their furniture or someone else's server for their car parts, or this great kind of underlying metaverse, right? And essentially these components that are all universal, that can go from app to app and be shared and aggregated together, I think is going to really change the way a lot of people work.
Yeah, it's a good point. We didn't really, so we're planning a future live stream to show actually real lifetime collaboration with multiple developers. So we can see their own screens working together on the same scene. But as we all saw today, there's great benefits to individual developers also. You don't need to be on a team to take full advantage of what Omniverse is. And on that note, I will thank Mr. Frank Delis and Mr. Vincent Brisebois for showing us the latest Omniverse Create. Again, we're going to stream typically on Wednesdays. We have, if you like some of those teasers for some of the stuff that Frank gave today, we're going to have a lot more details on what's coming when we do our Omniverse user group at SIGGRAPH. So go to nvidia.com/Omniverse for general information on Omniverse, and for SIGGRAPH, I posted a message in the chat for that link, but you can also check the About page on our Twitch page. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Frank.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
A lot of fun.
Happy to do it.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye.